As a cardinal, anti-Pope Benedict XIII had originally taken part himself in the election of Pope Urban VI, and then abandoned Urban and helped elect Clement, having, of course, been convinced that Urban's election was invalid. As a cardinal under anti-Pope Clement VII, Benedict XIII, quote, went to the Iberian Peninsula for 11 years as his legate, and by his diplomacy swung Aragon, Castile, Navarre, and Portugal to his, that is, anti-Pope Clement VII's, obedience, end quote. After having sworn to pursue the path of abdication in order to end the schism, if the majority of his cardinals agreed, anti-Pope Benedict XIII alienated many of his cardinals when he went back on his promise and showed himself unwilling to consider abdication, even though the majority of his cardinals wanted him to. His rival, Pope Boniface IX, was equally unwilling. In 1404, Pope Boniface IX, the successor to Urban VI, died, and Pope Innocent VII was elected as his successor by the 8 cardinals available. Pope Innocent VII didn't live long, however. He died just 2 years later, in 1406. During his short reign, Innocent VII had remained opposed to meeting with the Avignon claimant, Benedict XIII, despite having taken an oath before his election to do everything in his power to end the schism, including abdication if necessary. As the schism persisted, members of both camps became increasingly frustrated with both claimants' unwillingness to take effective measures to end the schism. Quote, voices were heard on all sides demanding that union be restored. The University of Paris, or rather its 2 most prominent professors, John Gerson and Peter Daly, proposed that a general council should be summoned to decide between the rival claimants. End quote. In accordance with this widespread sentiment to take effective action to end the schism, another oath was taken before the election of Pope Innocent VII's successor. Quote, each of the 14 cardinals at the conclave following Pope Innocent VII's death swore that, if elected, he would abdicate, provided anti-Pope Benedict XIII did the same or should die. Also that he would not create new cardinals except to maintain parity of numbers with the Avignon cardinals, and that within 3 months he would enter into negotiations with his rival about a place of meeting. End quote. The very fact that the cardinals preparing to elect a true pope took an oath such as this, which included negotiations with an anti-pope, shows how horrible the situation was during the schism, and how much support the anti-pope had in Christendom. The conclave proceeded to elect Pope Gregory XII on November 30th, 1406. Hope that the end of the schism would come was renewed by Pope Gregory XII's negotiations with anti-Pope Benedict XIII. The two even agreed on a place to meet, but Pope Gregory XII wavered. He feared, and rightly so, the sincerity of anti-Pope Benedict XIII's intentions. Pope Gregory XII was also influenced against the path of resignation by some of his close relatives, who painted a negative picture of what might happen if he resigned. Cardinals of both camps get fed up. They go to Pisa and elect a new, quote, pope, in an impressive ceremony with cardinals from both sides. Quote, as the negotiations between Pope Gregory XII and anti-Pope Benedict XIII dragged on, Gregory's cardinals became increasingly restive. An open break became inevitable when Gregory, suspicious of their loyalty, broke his pre-election promise, and on 4 May announced the creation of 4 new cardinals. All but 3 of his original college now left him and fled to Pisa. End quote. The 14 cardinals who left Pope Gregory XII's obedience and fled to Pisa were joined there by 10 cardinals who left anti-Pope Benedict XIII's obedience. The cardinals from the 2 camps had arranged a council, and were resolved to end the schism by means of a joint election at Pisa. Quote, in the eyes of the world, the Council of Pisa was indeed a glittering assembly, attended by 24 cardinals, 14 formerly adhering to Pope Gregory XII, 10 to De Luna, that is, anti-Pope Benedict XIII, 4 patriarchs, 80 bishops, 89 abbots, 41 priors, the heads of 4 religious orders, and representatives of virtually every university, crowned head, and great noble house in Catholic Europe. End quote. The Cardinal Archbishop of Milan gave the opening address at the Council of Pisa. He condemned both claimants, Gregory XII and anti-Pope Benedict XIII, and formally summoned them to appear at the council. They were declared contumacious when they did not appear. It must be stressed that at this point in the Schism, 1409, people were so exasperated with the enduring disunion and the broken promises of the two claimants that the assembly at Pisa was widely received and supported. It was made all the more impressive and appealing by the fact that its 24 cardinals were comprised of a substantial number of cardinals from both camps, that is, Pope Gregory XII's camp and anti-Pope Benedict XIII's camp. This gave it the appearance of a unified action of the Church's cardinals. On June 29, 1409, the 24 cardinals unanimously elected Alexander V. Now there were 3 claimants to the papacy at the same time. Father John Lau, Church History, page 405, says, quote, "There were now 3 popes and 3 colleges of cardinals, in some dioceses 3 rival bishops, and in some religious orders 3 rival superiors." End quote. It should also be noted that during this period, obviously many professing Catholics were receiving sacraments and having confessions heard by priests and bishops who had not been lawfully approved by true popes or bishops under true popes. Despite that fact, the Church has never called into question the validity of those sacraments or those confessions, recognizing the principle of supplied jurisdiction in such situations. The third claimant, the Pisan anti-pope, held the support of most of the theologians because he had the appearance of being the united choice of cardinals from both camps. The newly elected Pisan anti-pope, Alexander V, also held the widest support in Christendom among the 3 claimants. The true pope, Pope Gregory XII, had the least. From the beginning, Alexander V, quote, had the support of England, most of France, the Low Countries, Bohemia, Poland, his own Milan, Venice, and Florence. De Luna, that is, anti-Pope Benedict XIII, retained the support of his own Aragon, Castile, parts of southern France, and Scotland. Gregory XII, the true pope, was the weakest of the 3, retaining the loyalty only of Naples, western Germany, some northern Italian cities, and still true Carlo Malatesta of Rimini. The Great Western Schism had become a triangle of distorted loyalties, with the true pope the weakest of the 3. The Catholic Church seemed to be suffering the fate that would overtake later Protestantism. Repeated irrepressible subdivision, worst of all, no rescue from this disaster, seemed possible." End quote. Most of the learned theologians and canonists of the time favored the Pisan line of anti-popes. Quote, "Through the fall of 1408 and the winter of 1409, debate continued to rage among the theologians and canonists. Most of them, in varying degrees of desperation, now favored the council, regardless of who the true pope might be or how it was to be authorized." End quote. It should also be noted that during this period we saw the rise of the heresy of conciliarism, the idea that councils are superior to popes and can depose them, judge them, command them. No true pope in history had as little support as Pope Gregory XII near the end of the Great Western Schism. In 1411, the newly elected Holy Roman Emperor Sigismund followed the general sentiment and abandoned the true pope Gregory XII. Quote, "Sigismund wanted unanimous electoral endorsement, and in view of the widespread abandonment of Gregory XII by many of those who had previously obeyed him, notably in England and Italy, Sigismund's own confidence in Gregory's legitimacy may have been sincerely shaken. No true pope in the Church's history had so little support as Gregory XII following the Council of Pisa." End quote. The newly elected Pisan anti-pope, Alexander V, did not live long. He died less than a year after his election, in May of 1410. To succeed him on May 17, 1410, the Pisan cardinals unanimously elected Baldassare Cosa as John XXIII. Like his predecessor, anti-pope Alexander V, John XXIII also held the widest support among the 3 claimants.